President Biden spoke to Chinese President Xi for nearly 2 hours by video conference. The purpose of the call was to ensure that China doesn't offer Putin a lifeline and allow him to continue the attack on Ukraine. Lingling Wei is the chief China correspondent for the Wall Street Journal. Lingling, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
So the White House said that during the call, President Biden warned President Xi that there would be consequences if China offered material support to aid Russia's war effort. How did China react to that?
Sure. Shortly after the call concluded, Chinese state media immediately released a statement laying out China's position on the Ukraine issue, which is basically can summed up as, China still doesn't oppose Russia. At the same time, China supports Ukraine. The seemingly contradictory purposes really shows that, China's strategic focus on sticking to Russia, maintaining this kind of alignment with Russia, still very much there. And also it shows that the stance on supporting Ukraine, that shows that China, if they ever had intention to send military equipment to Russia, and now after this call, they would really think hard and think very hard about it and very careful about it. Our understanding based on our conversations with Chinese officials and foreign policy experts that they will refrain from sending military weapon and military equipment to Russia. One thing I wanted to point out is that it's very interesting also in terms of Chinese response. They highlighted this call as the need from Washington to talk to China about potentially solving this crisis. So basically, the call was viewed quite positively in Beijing because it shows that the U.S. needs China here.
So how does China view Russia's war on Ukraine? I mean, because I know that they value stability and, status quo, and this has definitely changed things.
So at this point, definitely their position on Russia's invasion of Ukraine remains very ambiguous, to say the best. So what really, I think, especially at the beginning, based on our conversations with people in the know in China, the Chinese leadership was somewhat surprised by the, very audacious assault launched by President Putin on Ukraine. So they kind of were caught off guard somewhat, didn't really know how to respond. But in the past week or so, their strategy had become more clear, which is, in any case, China is not going to abandon Russia as a partner because they really view this crisis through the lens of U.S.-China competition. Because in China's view, China needs Russia as a partner to confront the United States.
So, Lingling, how far is China willing to go to pressure Putin, and how much influence do they really have?
That's a great question because it's, obvious, right? If you really want this war to end, Xi Jinping should just pick up the call and tell Putin to back down, back off. However, it's a really big question exactly how big of influence or leverage Xi Jinping has over Putin. So this partnership, both sides declared on February 4th is one with no limits, but actually it's showing its limits in real time. I think, we're going to see more pressure from the international world on China to be more proactively condemn Russia for its action. But in terms of exactly how much they can help solve this crisis, it's still, yet to be seen.
And China has not yet condemned Russia's invasion of Ukraine, at least not publicly. I wonder if China's complying with U.S. financial sanctions against Russia.
So far, they have been, because Chinese banks and Chinese companies still very much need to access the dollar-denominated global trading system in order to do transactions. So, even very early on during the invasion, when I talked to my banking sources in China, they basically told me our default position is comply unless told otherwise. And that situation, that stance remains. And also, on the other hand, I would say China will try to maintain what they consider normal economic and trade ties with Russia. For example, they have signed very big oil and gas purchase agreements with Russia, and I do think that will continue. On one hand, it's kind of a form of support for an important partner. On the other hand, China also needs secure its energy supplies.
President Biden had discussed concerns that the Chinese government was spreading disinformation, repeating Russian claims that the U.S. is supporting biological weapons research in Ukraine. What can you tell us about that?
That just shows that the kind of U.S. bashing will continue to dominate Chinese media's coverage of this war. They have tried to tone down the kind of rhetoric that overly pro-Russian forces try to sort of like strike a balance between pro-Russia and pro-Ukraine. However, what hasn't changed is the kind of rhetoric criticizing the US and NATO for instigating this invasion. That just shows that for the Chinese leadership, the United States remains the biggest problem, the biggest strategic competitor.
What does Russia want from China? And what do we know about any discussions that could have happened between Russians and Chinese?
That's really a good question, sort of like in line with the one you asked earlier. So exactly how much Putin is expecting to get from Xi Jinping in terms of help, that's really not super clear. But for one thing, he definitely wants to continue the kind of economic and trade relationship. If he, I don't know, there are definitely U.S. intelligence showing that Russia had asked for military supplies from China, help them, continue to carry out this war. But question is, will China do it? Based on the indications so far, they probably won't provide the kind of lethal weapon to help Russia so blatantly carry out this war. Think about it. If you see made in China bullets on the streets of Ukraine, you wouldn't have any deniability whatsoever.
All right. Well, Lingling, thanks so much for joining us. Nice to talk to you.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on any future Government Matters interviews.